The story traces its origins back to Earth, a full 3 million years in the past. The protagonist, possessing a mind as primitive and curious as a monkey's, found themselves navigating the complexities of life on Earth. The individual possessed a deep passion for hunting. Against all odds, he had managed to survive long after the rest of his kind had vanished. Time seemed to lose its grip on him all at once. His sole source of enjoyment stemmed from engaging in battles. He transformed into a living weapon, and, through sheer force and determination, he clawed his way into the realm of the divine. The individual had ascended to become the highest-ranking deity in the divine realm, overseeing Earth as the esteemed god Mu. Over the years, Mu had experienced victory after victory, but eventually, the monotonous cycle of divine duties began to wear on him. One day, he expressed his frustration by forcefully stamping his foot on the ground. The planet trembled under his influence. The deities were filled with fear. Among those present was Lucifer, whose anger was palpable in response to Mu's actions. In the meantime, Mu gazed into the distance with a vacant expression, feeling utterly uninterested. He had already prepared meals for every divine being, demon, and creature imaginable. His last genuine battle had occurred a millennium prior. Possessing such immense strength proved to be a burden. Suddenly, realization dawned upon him. The entity pondered whether taking on the form of a human and diminishing his own powers might at last provide him with some novices to challenge. Having cemented that foolish notion in his mind, Mu stood up from his throne. The call went out for Dragonling. Upon hearing his intention to depart, Dragonling was overcome by panic. They attempted to restrain him. The intensity of the glare caused him to stop in his tracks, paralyzed by its piercing stare. Mu, indifferent to the impending gathering of deities, tugged her assistant along despite their reluctance. Channeling a surge of energy, he shattered the enchantment. He playfully provoked Dragonling, hinting at the possibility of a future confrontation. Feeling a surge of nervousness, Dragonling retreated while conveying hopes for his safe journey. Mu extended its awareness towards Earth, searching keenly for a suitable vessel. Upon stumbling upon a message, they halted momentarily, noticing it was from a distressed individual pleading to assume the role of the ice guy. A wide smile spread across their face. Dragonling was entrusted with the task of keeping vigil over his body. Someone else had taken his place. Dragonling cautioned that losing one's life would result in the loss of the soul. Despite everything, Mu simply offered a smile and decided to walk away. In the blink of an eye, his essence drifted away from his physical form. On Earth, Liho, wrapped in bandages, immersed himself in anime marathons, finding solace in the animated worlds as if they were his own form of healing therapy. In a world where main characters often stumbled upon secret advantages, he found himself weary of receiving nothing. With a cheerful grin, he casually tossed his phone aside. From the edge of the rooftop, they leaped into the open air. The foam broke into pieces. He had done the same. Blood gathered on the floor as shattered pieces of glass scattered around. His breath quivered. Mu's spirit descended from above, infusing life back into his shattered form. In that transformative instant, Liho transitioned from being merely an anime enthusiast to becoming the main character of an entirely new narrative. In the divine realm, Liho found himself inhabiting a superior form. In front of him loomed an enormous dragon. Both individuals found themselves engulfed in shock and fear as they faced the unfolding events. Back on Earth, Liho was sprawled across the floor, trembling with agony. His entire body pulsed from within. Mu, having gained mastery over even the involuntary muscles, seized control with ease. With determination, he calmed his racing heart and managed to halt the flow of blood. After what felt like an eternity, he experienced a renewed sense of vitality. With a hand resting on his forehead, he delved into Liho's memories, examining them carefully. Despite the lingering pain, he attempted to make his way to Liho's base. However, his legs betrayed him, refusing to support his weight any longer. He decided to invert the norm and began to move forward using his hands instead of his feet. The visitor arrived at the home of Liho. After sifting through the layers of memory, upon discovering more about Liho's circumstances, it became clear that Liho was living by himself. In a state of financial hardship and unhappiness, his days followed the monotonous pattern of attending school. In that place, an individual instigated conflicts with him. The idea filled Mu with excitement. The opportunity to dive directly into a confrontation thrilled him. With enthusiasm, he began practicing his punches in the air, perfecting his form against an invisible opponent. Pain surged through his arm. Liho's physique was not suited for such demands. For the first time in a millennium, the sensation of soreness strangely excited him. The following day, as he journeyed toward his school, Mu walked past the crash site, which was now teeming with police officers. Without a hint of concern, he arrived at the classroom and flung the door open with a loud bang. A young man shot a piercing glare in his direction, muttering under his breath that he was nothing more than a fool. Mu confidently strode forward. Mu wore a sinister grin. Drawing from Liho's memories, he recognized this individual as the bully. Today, Mu had arrived to settle old scores, with a little extra added for good measure. The bully ridiculed the boy, insinuating that he had lost his mind, and sarcastically remarked about the absence of his glasses. Mu opened his mouth to speak, but before he could utter a word, the bully's fist came crashing into his face. The taunts continued, suggesting he seemed like less of a challenge than an elderly woman. Blood erupted from Mew's mouth. Mew adhered to his own set of principles when it came to combat. In his view, a battle wasn't truly underway until the adversary unmistakably demonstrated their intention to fight. The initial blow served as the only validation he required. With blood dripping from his mouth, Mew's laughter took on a chilling edge. It was as if he had been given permission to unleash his fury, all because the other guy had initiated the confrontation. The bully accused him of madness, but the moment had already passed. Mew's hand tightened into a fist. The object was forcefully driven into the bully's forehead with a powerful strike. A sharp pain surged through his arm immediately afterward, a consequence of the strained muscles. His hand shook once more, serving as a stark reminder that he was no longer in his divine form. The teacher raised their voice in an attempt to break up the altercation. The remainder of the students watched the unfolding turmoil with wide-eyed fascination. The bully seethed with rage after being struck. The individual, nose bleeding and broken, charged once more at Mew with reckless determination. Mew did his utmost to protect himself, managing to block the majority of the assaults. Despite himself, he pondered how effortlessly he could have resolved the situation if only his true form had been involved. The thought of utilizing his divine abilities crossed his mind momentarily. The discovery that mana was ineffective on Earth came as a complete surprise to him. In that instant of shock, he took another blow to the face. The bully showed no intention of retreating. Recognizing that victory was impossible with his frail physique, Mew realized that he couldn't depend on his limbs or any magical powers. This realization left him with a singular path forward. Unfortunately, the delicate nature of finger bones made them inadequate for overcoming the durability of a skull. In an abrupt maneuver, Mew bent forward, letting the punch land squarely on his forehead. When the bully's punch connected, it shattered on impact, just as anticipated. The intense pain forced a scream from his lips. At that instant, Mew experienced a surge of brilliance. Mew, realizing the urgency of the situation, swiftly seized the bully's hand. With precise aim, the character delivered a powerful head-butt directly to the sensitive area that most men found unbearable. The bully, caught off guard, was struck again, overwhelmed by a fresh surge of pain. Mew reacted swiftly, driving his head forcefully into the man's jaw, overwhelming him with excruciating pain. The bully's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed onto his knees. Around them, students observed the scene unfold, with some offering cheers of encouragement, while others captured the moment on their phones. Liho, the most unlikely hero and considered the weakest student in school, had just managed to defeat one of the most notorious bullies. The group murmured quietly, puzzled by how Liho had hurried home the previous day after being overpowered. Yet today he had remarkably reversed the situation. Once the battle concluded and the thrill subsided, Mew experienced a sensation that only the harsh lessons of pain could impart. The persistent ache spread across his face, a metallic tang of blood lingered in his mouth. A grin spread across his face as he took in everything around him. Just moments after, Mew found himself gazing at the unconscious man sprawled across the floor. There was an undeniable sense that his encounter with this individual was far from over. He might have expressed gratitude to the man for providing such an enjoyable challenge. Without any warning, Mew suddenly leaned forward and clamped his teeth down on the man's ear. Crimson droplets scattered in all directions. He didn't simply take a bite, he methodically chewed off small portions. In front of all his classmates, Mew expelled the contents from his mouth. A wave of horror swept through the room as disbelief gripped every student who witnessed Mew's shocking action. The group collectively began to regard him as utterly unhinged. Mew, still immersed in his own rhythm, casually wiped his mouth with the serene satisfaction of someone who had just enjoyed a delicious steak. He glanced down at the human figure which lay twitching like a rag doll, and a smile spread across his face. The opponent had a twisted tradition that added a sharp edge to their confrontations, making the fight particularly enjoyable for him. The unfortunate individuals were known as the Mew's playthings. To Mew, the title was a mark of honor, reserved for only the strongest fighters. To everyone around, it appeared as a living warning sign wrapped in human form. When news of the fight circulated, second-grade students couldn't stop talking about it. The unexpected twist that left everyone in shock was not merely the bully's loss of his grade point average, it was the revelation that he had also lost his future as a father. The severity of the man's injuries forced the staff to summon an ambulance. Mew, along with the other intrigued students, observed as the boy was led away. As the ambulance departed, he waved farewell with a lingering hope that one day he would encounter that bully once more. A teacher, visibly furious, emerged behind Mew and promptly instructed him to head to the teacher's office. Upon their arrival, the teacher's composure shattered, and he erupted in frustration, loudly questioning Mew about his sanity. The teacher, consumed by anger, grabbed a piece of cardboard, appearing ready to strike. Mew grinned as she observed Loki, who seemed to be eager for an opportunity to unleash his chaotic nature once more. The teacher, upon observing the unsettling grin, decided to abandon the suggestion. He quietly questioned his own actions, pondering the futility of engaging in conversation with someone like Mew. Firmly, he instructed Mew to summon both his parents and grandparents. Determined to avoid making a spectacle once more, Mew prepared herself for a blow that ultimately did not arrive. Without uttering a word, he departed as instructed. As he made his way back to Liho's residence, They assumed that departing ahead of time likely implied returning home. Observing the unsteady shake of his own hand, he considered that perhaps this was a blessing in disguise. After all, he realized he needed some time to regain his strength. He realized that if he wished to continue battling with his weakened body, there was much he needed to accomplish. The damage inflicted upon his hand was evident, as it trembled uncontrollably. He longed for the ability to harness mana to expedite his healing process. In certain parts of the world, the extraordinary energy surpassing human capabilities is referred to as mana, while some know it as chi or chakra. Many deities recognize chakra as the vital energy that coursed through the natural world. This force compelled people to hunt, wizards living in realms unlike our own. On Earth, there was no mana to be found, rendering the use of magic and skills impossible. Despite Mew's intense desire to depend on it, he found himself unable to do so. He attempted once more, yet success continued to elude him. He remembered his previous battle when he attempted to use it, but it had no effect. He realized he needed to adjust to battling without relying on mana and concentrate on strengthening his physical abilities through training. Upon arriving at his base, Mew collapsed onto his bed with a groan, his body insistently calling for a break. He decided that, in the meantime, he might as well return to the God Realm to check on the happenings there. In a moment, his essence transformed, and he found himself back in his own body. Upon regaining consciousness, his eyes widened in shock. Before him stood Leiho, the very earthling whose body he had once inhabited. Leiho was gripping the young dragon tightly, treating the creature as though it were nothing more than a plaything, swinging it around with an air of ownership over the entire scene. Leiho, brimming with confidence, faced Mew and insisted that he surrender the dragon. Leiho mentioned that he had contacted Mew to transport him to another world. Since he was going through the trouble, he thought it would be a good opportunity to obtain the dragon as well. Mew felt irritated by the other's demeanor. He held firm in his resolve, refusing to relinquish his position to anyone. Without a moment's pause, he clutched Leiho firmly. The situation left him perplexed as she began to move ahead. The man declared his intention to transport the boy to a different realm. Lucifer resided in his realm during that era, holding the position of second among the deities. He was carefully examining the planet known as Elmer. They arrived an hour earlier than expected. The dragonling attempted to clarify the situation, but before it could utter a single word, Lucifer interrupted. He had no interest in listening to any explanation. Mew was indifferent as he instructed the gate to be opened, with the purpose of sending Leiho to Elmer. Lucifer reminded him that Elmer belonged to the Mew's domain, implying that he had no authority there. Mew grinned with an unsettling expression, dismissing the concern by confidently asserting his superior strength. Lucifer, should he encounter any issues, was welcome to confront him directly. Mew stood perpetually prepared for such a challenge. Lucifer understood that victory was unattainable. In silent exasperation, he internally labeled Mew as a fool driven purely by strength. Mew promptly advanced without hesitation. In a moment of daring curiosity, he laid his hand on the surface of Elmer. Lucifer had cautioned him that meddling within the realm of another god was strictly forbidden. A barrier would spring to life even in the presence of the person speaking. As soon as the barrier took shape, Mew effortlessly broke it apart. Lucifer's eyes widened in surprise. Mew accused him of being a lazy bum, expressing doubt that he would ever be able to accomplish such a task. Lucifer explained that the workings of the world's laws were simply the way things were. Mew extended his hand, releasing Leiho and instructing him to leap into the opening he had created in Elmer. Leiho paused, fear visibly etched across his face. Mew gently reminded him of his desire for another world. Leiho repeated his request, longing for the dragon once more. Mew firmly stated that Yongyong belonged to him and advised the other person to seek out their own dragonling. In a burst of energy, he propelled Leiho towards Elmer, hurling him with such force that he collided directly with Sky. As Mew began to walk away, he grumbled under his breath about how the youth of today seemed unwilling to put in any effort. In a nonchalant manner, he instructed Lucifer to look after him and then departed. Lucifer stood in place, a mixture of humiliation and seething anger coursing through him, his mind consumed with a fervent desire to possess the strength to rip Mew to pieces. Once upon a time, the tale of Lucifer was vastly different. His journey began on the distant planet of Elmer. In the past, he had been recognized as the foremost demon king, towering above all forms of life. Brimming with arrogance, he issued a challenge to the entity known as God. In the initial clash of their confrontation, Lucifer conjured a dazzling spear made of pure light. With lethal precision, it was thrown with tremendous force. Even a deity would be unable to endure it. The assault brought his downfall. In a bold move, Lucifer stepped into the role once held by God and proceeded to conquer the remaining deities of the divine realm, toppling them one by one. Ultimately, he seized the throne and became the Supreme One. He ascended to the highest divine rank, becoming the supreme deity above all others. The words described a being that was unbeatable, mythical, boundless, and beyond comprehension. He possessed an aura of legend and disaster, inspiring both fear and a sense of unrivaled presence. The glory days were abruptly shattered when Mew appeared, leaving Lucifer with a lingering sense of humiliation. From that moment on, he committed himself to seeking retribution, condemning Mew as a foolish human of low birth. In the present time, Mew was journeying back to his home planet, riding atop his young dragon. Unaware of the presence hovering above, he remained oblivious to the watchful gaze from the sky. A demon, presumably dispatched by Lucifer, observed him intently, attempting to discern Mu's next move. Much like Lucifer's wrath ignited after experiencing disgrace, the boy whom Leho had shattered simmered with anger as well. He vowed to himself that he would ensure the defeat of that pitiful loser. Upon awakening in the hospital, swathed in bandages, he muttered softly to himself, frustrated at the thought that although Leho had put on a brave front, he was already defeated. With a clear intent guiding his actions, he extended his hand to grasp his phone. In a different part of the gym, a young man relentlessly pounded away at a punching bag, the sound of his fists reverberating throughout the space. Kang held the title of middleweight boxing champion at the 11th National Sports Festival in the youth division. As soon as the ringtone reached his ears, he turned his head, curious about the identity of the person calling out to him. In the distance, a young man with blonde hair claimed ownership of the phone. He approached, retrieved his damaged phone, and responded to the call. The individual was known as Guak, possessing 2 years of boxing experience and having participated in 14 sparring sessions. The bully recalled to Guak the time when Guak mentioned his screen was broken, and he proposed getting him a replacement. Guak paused in silence momentarily. A smirk played across her lips as she suggested he should simply get straight to the point. The following day, the classroom atmosphere was peaceful. The scene unfolded as the bully, wrapped in bandages, made an entrance. As everyone watched, it was as though they were witnessing a personified failure, whispering among themselves. He pondered over the series of events that led him to this predicament. Several students teased him, claiming that he was all talk and lacked any real courage, puzzled as to why anyone would fear him. One student humorously remarked that his ability to father children might be seriously lacking. The bully, overwhelmed by frustration, could no longer contain himself. In a fit of anger, he hurled his bag to the ground and directed a loud outburst at those around him. He accused them of cowardice for speaking just loud enough for him to overhear. Boldly, he challenged anyone who took issue with him to step forward and confront him. A girl wearing glasses, known as the class president, rose to her feet. Feeling a surge of irritation, she directed him to either take a seat or leave the room. He shouted at her, questioning her sanity as he completely lost his composure. In a sudden, chilling moment, he questioned her desire to live, his voice dripping with menace. Without warning, he seized a chair and attempted to hurl it in her direction. Instantly, a wave of terror swept through the classroom, leaving everyone paralyzed with fear. At that moment, a towering teacher resembling the Hulk entered the room, inquiring about the commotion. He observed the girl who was standing nearby and inquired about the events that had transpired. The girl took a seat and softly mentioned that it was of no consequence. The boy instructed her to meet him after the class had ended. She pondered internally about what his intentions might be. Following the end of the school day, she found herself in the presence of the teacher. He expressed a request for her assistance, explaining that Li Ho had not been responding to his phone calls. Concerned, the teacher sought her help to look into the situation. As he departed, he promised to craft a glowing recommendation letter for her upcoming senior year. After that, she found herself unable to decline. Later, she made her way to Li Ho's residence. Her knocks on the door went unanswered. The door stood wide open. As she stepped inside with measured caution, she suddenly halted in her tracks. The scene before her was truly dreadful. Li Ho's lifeless form rested on the ground, surrounded by a scuttling mass of insects. His eyes were rolled upwards and his mouth gaped open. A scream of horror escaped from her as she took in the scene. Li Ho found himself being swiftly transported to the hospital. While he rested in bed receiving medical attention, an unusual event unfolded. Mu's spirit found its way back into his physical form. Upon waking, he found himself bewildered by the strange environment around him. It bore no resemblance to the world he once knew. A strange sensation coursed through him, drawing his attention to the tube inserted in his arm. He was shocked to discover that a fluid was being directly injected into his bloodstream. With divine understanding, he identified the nutrients. The speed at which his body absorbed them was remarkable. Though not the work of magic, the outcome remained astonishing. The unsettling grin spread across his face as he mused over the surprisingly worthwhile aspects of Earth. The girl with glasses glanced at him, feeling uneasy about that strange smile, wondering if he had lost his mind. The homeroom teacher had tasked her with the responsibility of locating him and conveying the message that he was required back at school. With her bag in hand, she prepared to depart. Mu rose to her feet, her gaze fixed intently as she pondered whether she was the one responsible for aiding his recovery. Rather than expressing his gratitude, he posed a question to her. In her rush, she inquired impatiently about what he wanted now. Mu, with a wide grin, was eager to learn more about Earth. He inquired if she was aware of any location suitable for him to enhance his physical strength. Without hesitating, he withdrew the needle from his vein and prepared to depart alongside her. She glanced at him sideways, internally deciding that he was completely out of his mind. He questioned whether he had the funds for such a purchase. Afterward, she proposed a spot that was far from being luxurious. Later that day, Mu found himself in a modest park gym, inspecting the aged exercise equipment. He decided to begin his workout with some pull-ups. He was breathing heavily and sweating, his gaze moving around with a sense of awe. He pondered over whether this location was named Sansujang. The gear appeared incredibly advanced when compared to the tools he had used 4 millennia earlier. In the past, Individuals honed their skills through activities like rolling stones and scaling cliffs. They focused on the task of digging holes. The surroundings were rudimentary and undeveloped, leading him to reconsider his earlier assumptions about the resilience of Earthlings. As he approached the cycling machine, uncertainty clouded his mind about the nature of this training. As he began to pedal, a sudden impact, akin to being struck by a stone, caught him by surprise from behind. The action was executed swiftly as they descended to the ground. He turned around and noticed the same bully who was now covered in bandages, standing there with an expression of pure rage. After a lengthy search, he finally located Leiho. Accompanying Leiho was his friend Guak, who was known for his boxing skills. They both explained that they had scoured the entire neighborhood looking for him. Miu remained composed as she reached down to lift the stone, her curiosity piqued by the mystery of who had thrown it. The bully, emboldened by Guak's presence, confessed to his actions. He issued a threat to Miu, boasting that his cousin had already dealt with all the third-year students. Before he had the chance to complete his sentence, Miu delivered a powerful punch directly to his already fractured nose. The impact forced him to the ground, where he lay, groaning and uttering curses under his breath. Miu prepared himself, his trademark unsettling grin firmly in place, eagerly anticipating the upcoming battle. In the realm of the gods, tension hung in the air as the regular divine meeting approached. As was often the case, Miu was nowhere to be found. Instead, his assistant, a small dragonling, made an appearance. The young dragon, visibly anxious and uncomfortable in his surroundings, declared his intention to commence the meeting. With a piece of paper shaking in his claws, he informed the group that, in the absence of Lord Miu, he would proceed to read the message aloud and then make his exit. Before he could utter many words, Lucifer, filled with disgust and seething with anger, cut him off. He fixed the dragonling with a sharp glare, questioning why it would dare to attend a gathering meant for gods. The dragonling, feeling a chill under Lucifer's piercing gaze, hurriedly clarified that he had no plans to meddle. He was adamant that his sole purpose was to convey a message. Recognizing the potential for the situation to worsen, he hurriedly started to recite the contents of the note, his voice trembling with unease. The message was identical to the ones Miu consistently dispatched. If a formidable opponent emerged, they were to inform him. That was the entire instruction. Upon hearing the news, Lucifer's fury could not be restrained. With a forceful slam, he struck the table, causing it to crack, and declared with a shout that the situation was futile. He expressed his frustration, complaining that Miu no longer made any effort to appear. The character wondered whether the other gods had agreed to this decision. The room remained silent, as the others quietly concurred with Lucifer. Even though Miu was absent, no one dared to utter a single word. Lucifer continued, emphasizing that the purpose of these gatherings was to maintain global stability. In the divine realm, the archer god, who held the esteemed third rank, explained that their mission was to step in whenever the earth god struggled with unusual disturbances. He expressed his frustration and dismay over Miu's absence, finding it both absurd and disheartening. Seizing the moment, Lucifer felt his frustration intensifying. He expressed that the true problem was Miu's attitude, as she approached the responsibility of maintaining the world as if it were merely a game. Due to Miu's impulsive actions, the stability of the entire system was endangered. He shouted that Miu's supposed fixes consistently exacerbated the situation. Facing the ninth-ranked deity, the god of Cyclops, Lucifer recalled an event from the past. The memory of Miu's actions a millennium ago resurfaced, recalling the devastation wrought upon the Cyclops planet. At that time, the planet teetered on the brink of annihilation. A colossal and hideous creature known as Shoggoth emerged, possessing the terrifying ability to consume the entire planet. As the creature commenced its destruction of the Cyclops' homeworld, an unforeseen event transpired. It was instantaneously pierced through its core and torn asunder. The source of the thrill was Miu, who brimmed with excitement and reveled in the opportunity to battle, easily overcoming the monster with delight. Lucifer highlighted this incident as evidence of Miu's negligence. He contended that had the gods collaborated, they might have reduced the destruction. Instead, Miu's foolishness allowed a portion of the planet to be consumed. He announced his inability to remain idle while Miu wreaked havoc, asserting that Miu was unworthy of the title of a god. The young dragon remained silent, unable to find any words to shield his master. The character hoped fervently for Miu's swift return. While events unfolded elsewhere, Miu, occupying Leiho's body, fixed his gaze on the bully, who continued to clutch his injured nose. The man continued to hurl curses and threats at Miu, insisting that his cousin, who was a boxer, would take care of the situation. Guak, the cousin, remained awestruck by the force of Miu's punch and inquired about the sport Miu participated in. Miu responded nonchalantly, explaining that he wasn't involved in any games. Instead, he simply engaged in battles. Guak discarded his chewing gum and ridiculed the other person, suggesting that they were suffering from a bout of middle school syndrome. He assumed his stance, expressing his readiness to discover what Miu could offer. The character aggressively rushed forward towards his opponent. With a powerful swing, the punch connected squarely with Miu's face, launching him through the air and leaving his nose bleeding. Guak remained in place, utterly astonished. There was something peculiar about the man. He had observed the punch from start to finish, yet made no attempt to avoid it. Guak remained unaware that Miu, driven by an unwavering passion for combat, never shied away from initiating with the first blow. To him, that moment marked the beginning of the true battle. Mew, sporting his characteristic wild grin, loudly proclaimed that hand-to-hand combat was Jiwak's forte. The mere sight of the grin sent a shiver down Guok's spine, causing him to begin suspecting that the person before him might truly be unhinged. Mew observed Guok's fighting stance carefully and then attempted to mimic it, inquiring if he was doing it correctly. Without hesitation, he surged ahead, leaving Guok to suspect that he was merely imitating him. As Mew launched a punch, Guok effortlessly intercepted it with his palm. Unexpectedly, the force propelled him backward. The impact caused his hand to throb painfully, leaving him astonished at the strength contained in the punch from someone who appeared so unassuming. It seemed almost unbelievable. Mew's expression brightened with heightened enthusiasm. The attack had been successful. Simply by mimicking Guok's stance, he managed to deliver an impeccable strike. Just before the collision, Mew braced himself by clenching his muscles with great intensity. The pain forced a scream from their lips. The sensation was incredible. With each surge of pain, his enjoyment only increased. He understood that none of the weaker opponents he'd faced had ever challenged him with such intensity. This powerful sensation brought back memories of his battle with that formidable creature. Guok could hardly believe his eyes when he saw Mew unfasten his belt. Mew wrapped the material around his fist. He realized that in order to continue the fight, he needed to offer some protection to Liho's body, even if it was just a small amount. To achieve this, Mew decided to employ a temporary Hamantes. The bully, bruised and defeated, whimpered about Mew's unfair tactics. Guok sternly advised him to stay out of it. He re-entered the fray with the newfound understanding that this was not an opponent to be underestimated. With a flurry of rapid punches, he unleashed his speed and strength, aiming to overpower his opponent. Despite the onslaught, Mew managed to block the majority of the strikes, although the pain began to sap his agility and slow his reactions. Guok continued to mock him, declaring that his defensive skills were worthless. As the battle progressed, Mew began to observe Guok's technique, noting its speed and accuracy, yet finding it overly predictable. Mew precisely discerned the target of every strike. Dodging became an effortless task. As Jiwak unleashed a powerful, conclusive strike, Mew intercepted the attack swiftly, retaliating with such speed that Guok's arm was broken in an instant. The young man let out a loud cry of surprise. Mew observed him quietly without uttering a word. A realization suddenly dawned on him. He remembered that the bully had screamed in exactly the same manner when he was struck. This amusing connection brought a grin to Mew's face as he considered the possibility that they might be cousins or perhaps connected through a shared experience with LS. In a final move to conclude the fight, Mew delivered a decisive punch to Guok, rendering him unconscious. Observing the situation unfold, the bully felt a chill sweep over him, causing a cold sweat to cover his entire body. With the same dangerous grin still etched on his face, Mew shifted his gaze toward him. He acknowledged that the moment had come for him to face the consequences of the chaos he had created. The bully found himself consumed by panic. With his cousin already defeated, he realized that no rescue was forthcoming, leaving him to face the inevitable consequences alone. Mew advanced toward the bully, keenly observing the fear etched across his opponent's face. It was evident that the man lacked any desire to defend himself, and the act had ceased to bring him any satisfaction. Just as Mew appeared to be on the verge of dismissing the situation, much to his surprise, Mew unexpectedly delivered a powerful punch to him. The action led to his return. Mew relentlessly continued his attack, giving his opponent no opportunity to withstand the onslaught for much longer. The face of the bully quickly became swollen, with blood oozing profusely. Mew remained indifferent. The altercation had been initiated by the aggressive individual, who had been the first to engage in conflict. Mew hovered above him, a smug expression on her face, as she declared his ruthlessness and his refusal to acknowledge defeat. Afterward, he turned and departed. The bully, his face marred by injury, continued to hurl curses at Liho. Subsequently, Mew arrived at Liho's peculiar abode, which resembled an insect's habitat, and took a seat on the bed. The individual believed that engaging in battles was an enjoyable experience. His body appeared frail, prone to frequent tearing. Mew believed it was unfortunate that the sensation was continually disrupted. His fist clenched tightly as he shut his eyes. Upon making his decision, he resolved to retrieve the item he had mentioned to Dragonling on his return. Mew attempted to separate his soul from Liho's body, but his efforts were in vain. The situation seemed odd to him. Several days prior, within the bounds of the Divine Realm, Mew found himself within Elmer's domain when Lucifer compelled him to return unwillingly to Liho's body. Mew had rejected Lucifer's offer. Lucifer was consumed with anger. Once Mew arrived back home, Dragonling was curious about his journey to Earth. Mew described the experience as fulfilling, although he also noted the frailty of his physical form. Mew requested that Dragonling locate a recovery magic orb on his behalf. The presence of such orbs was commonly observed on planets teeming with abundant mana. On Earth, they were exceedingly scarce and could only be obtained through a divine favor or a celestial whim. Dragonling gave a nod, assuring Mew that he would create a magic orb to aid in his recovery. Before Mew could embark on his journey back to Earth, Dragonling took a moment to remind him of the impending gathering of the gods. Mew nonchalantly slipped his hand into his pocket. A piece of paper was passed to Dragonling, signaling to him that everything had been arranged in advance. Dragonling let out a frustrated sigh as he watched Mew walk away. Unaware of the presence of Lucifer's tiny demon lurking nearby, the group remained oblivious as the creature meticulously observed their every action, relaying all gathered information back to Lucifer. In the current moment, Lucifer found himself scrutinizing the circumstances. It had caught him off guard that Mew's soul was missing from his body, and additionally, Mew had not shown up at the assembly of the gods. Lucifer came to the understanding that Mew would be absent from the divine realm for some time. The opportunity appeared to be perfect, a rare chance that only occurred once in a millennium. Lucifer lifted his hands and unleashed his life taxidermy magic. Spear-like bolts of vibrant purple materialized in the air above Dragonling. With his keen instincts, Dragonling swiftly leaped backward at the perfect moment. He questioned whether this signified a declaration of war against Mew, the god of the earth. Lucifer ascended into the air, his voice carrying a resolute tone. The proclamation declared that a conflict was underway, and that Mew would be dethroned from his divine position. Dragonling acted swiftly, not allowing even a second to slip by. With unwavering determination, he concentrated and condensed the flames within his breath. Releasing a potent attack, it surged ahead with the precision and intensity of a laser beam. Initially, Lucifer felt a wave of surprise wash over him. Effortlessly, he evaded it. The force of his assault held its intensity and detonated on the distant edge of the deity's domain, unleashing a tremendous shockwave. The god of archery hurriedly constructed a shield to safeguard both himself and the surrounding deities. Despite the circumstances, Lucifer stood without a scratch and appeared completely indifferent. Observing the ineffectiveness of his initial strike, Dragonling concluded that it was time to unleash the polymorph ability. A vibrant red light enveloped his body, while an unusual aura emanated from his eyes, causing Dragonling to expand into a colossal form. With a determined seriousness, he prepared himself to do whatever was necessary to safeguard Mew. Despite the situation, Lucifer showed no sign of being impressed, resolutely planning to handle both Mew and Dragonling when the moment was right. As the god of archery exhaled a weary breath, he resolved to depart with a nonchalant air. He mentioned that the environment wasn't suitable for holding a proper divine gathering. The dragon's strategy unraveled unexpectedly. Lucifer's magic overcame him, ensnaring his entire form and rendering him unable to move, leaving him severely wounded. Upon witnessing the scene, every other god found themselves in a state of shock. Meanwhile, the archer made the choice to depart from the area. Lucifer observed the sideways glance and summoned him back with a voice as cold as ice. The question was posed to determine his stance, whether he favored the expulsion or stood against it. The archer, displaying a lack of concern, instructed that he be noted as neutral before he turned and strode off. Lucifer instructed him to remain on the sidelines. Lucifer turned his attention to the other gods, inquiring if there were any among them who stood against his decision. The room fell into a hushed stillness as the once formidable assistant of Mew lay defeated, leaving everyone speechless. The injured Dragonling looked at Lucifer, challenging him with the notion that if he truly believed he could defeat his master. Lucifer smirked, explaining that Mew had possessed the fragile body of a human. The young dragon was taken aback by the fact that Lucifer was aware of this information. Lucifer revealed that his decision to rebel against Mew stemmed from this very reason. The man attributed the entire situation to the dragon's complacency and inattentiveness. He expressed his disappointment at witnessing the Dragonling in such a feeble condition. The young dragon found the harsh words unbearable. Desperate and out of options, he attempted one final strike using his powerful tail. Lucifer deftly maneuvered out of the way, having already anticipated the move. Lucifer, wielding a magical weapon, swiftly sliced his tail into two, commanding him to remain in place. He explained that as long as the young dragon remained alive, Mew would still have a chance to return to Earth. Once Mew arrived, Lucifer would ensure his utter destruction. Lucifer had spared him for that very reason. Lucifer chuckled at the pitiful state of the Dragonling as it collapsed onto the ground, coughing up blood and shaking with agony. On Earth, Guak found himself on the receiving end of his coach's reprimands. With the competition fast approaching, Guak had landed himself in trouble by getting into a fight, resulting in a broken arm. Guak expressed his regret, yet his coach insisted that he leave and not return until his arm had fully recovered. Overcome with rage, Guak stormed toward the exit, muttering curses under his breath at Liho for causing this mess. As Guak approached the door, he was taken aback to discover Kong standing there. Upon Guak's explanation of the events that had transpired, Guak quietly believed that Kang stood out as the top boxer in their gym. Guak pondered whether Kong might assist him in seeking vengeance against Liho. Guak unleashed a torrent of tears, reminiscent of a child in distress, as he recounted the tale of his younger brother being tormented by bullies. When Guak attempted to intervene and resolve the situation, the bullies had united against him and delivered a beating. Guak continued to sob and utter curses about the troublemakers, all the while recounting how the incident occurred right before his important competition. Kang chose to ignore the situation, strolling by Guak without a second glance. He suggested that Guak needed to exercise more caution and implied that he should avoid unnecessary confrontations. Guak had the opportunity to squeeze in one more sparring session. Guak felt a wave of shock wash over him as Kang turned his back and departed. The character shifted back and inquired of Guak the identity of the unfamiliar man. At the same time, Mew remained puzzled about why his soul had not yet returned to his physical form. Mew believed that his body would be securely protected by the Dragonling, and felt confident that it would be safe from most dangers. Mew felt a chill run down his spine at the thought that perhaps every deity had joined forces against him. Overwhelmed with rage, Mew sprang to his feet and delivered a punch to his pillow, unable to believe the reality before him. The remark had been made that it had been quite some time since anyone had dared to challenge him, and now the moment had arrived to teach them a lesson. In a furious outburst, Mew continued to throw punch after punch. After some time had passed, his hands began to tremble. Feeling troubled, he made an effort to soothe his own nerves. Mew believed Dragonling was not the type to be defeated easily, yet Mew felt compelled to take action. Therefore, Mew resolved to focus on strengthening his body for the time being. The following day, Mew returned to the gym at the park. He attempted pull-ups, this time employing his legs for the exercise. Mew focused on strengthening muscles that had been largely neglected. The sensation of pain coursing through Mew's body was a stark reminder of her existence. Mew burst into laughter, his whole being consumed by the energy of his amusement. The nearby onlookers found themselves intrigued, pondering over the origins of someone as eccentric as him. At that moment, a voice from behind abruptly interrupted his focus on training. Startled, he released his hold, plummeting face first into the earth with all the grace of a dropped sack of potatoes. Dazed, he lifted his gaze and found himself staring at the class president. The bespectacled girl was fuming with frustration as she questioned the absence of Mew from school. Later on, while they were seated on a bench, Mew clarified that the location was not intended for training. The girl looked at Mew with curiosity, wondering about his intentions. Mew revealed his desire to become stronger, admitting that he currently felt weak. He elaborated on how the lack of training had left his body fragile, pointing out that his arm was already hurt from several battles. Mew believed that by training at the gym he could increase his endurance. With greater strength, Mew felt confident that he would be capable of facing more challenges. The girl attentively listened to Mew as he continued to talk endlessly about battles that seemed to last for hours. She pondered over how she might manage to get him back to school. She resolved to exploit his passion for combat to her advantage. According to her, there was little reason for him to hone his skills alone if no worthy opponent awaited him. She instructed him to return to school the next day and then turn to leave, reminding him not to let it become her issue. Mew concluded that the idea was logical and speculated that formidable adversaries might be present in that location. Mew decided it was time to return to school, thinking it could be the perfect place to discover a challenging opponent. As Mew contemplated the situation, a shadow emerged silently behind him. A figure concealed behind a mask and protective glasses, clutching a weapon, directed their attention towards Mew, inquiring if he was Liho, a student in his second year. Mew maintained his composure with a grin, as if Earth was the perfect battleground, especially since he was already being confronted by someone. Mew pivoted with elegance and initiated the attack, seeking to ascertain if the confrontation was genuine. At the age of 15, Kang began to distinguish himself in the world of boxing. His sister was quickly earning a reputation as a promising new talent in the world of ballet. Kang had always been her biggest supporter. One day, however, she found herself being followed by an unwanted admirer. His fixation intensified significantly. The boundary was overstepped. One evening, he made an attempt to abduct her. Kang arrived just in the nick of time, narrowly succeeding in preventing it from happening. The force of his punch was sufficient to warrant the stalker's arrest by the authorities. However, the intervention came too soon, preventing the man from receiving the full extent of the consequences he deserved. After being released, the stalker's fixation intensified. The boy trailed the girl once more, this time clutching a knife with the intention of harming her. Kang attempted to step in again, but this time his efforts fell short as he couldn't react quickly enough. His sister's legs were injured, and her dreams of becoming a ballerina were crushed, much like a swan's wings when they are broken. Following that incident, Kang's faith in the law was completely shattered. He resolved to take action, where the law had fallen short. Each night, Kang would discreetly engage in his vigilante activities. He ensured that those who appeared to be potential lawbreakers faced consequences ahead of time. For him, engaging in combat symbolized a form of judgment, and Mew was not an exception to this belief. In the present moment, Mew was caught off guard as Kang's punch landed squarely on his face. Mew noticed the metallic tang of blood from his nose, pondering whether Kang was putting him to the test. The undeniable truth was that Kang had been the one to initiate the attack. Mew had anticipated that locating a fight might take some time, but fortune appeared to be on his side. Kang observed him intently, astonished that Mew remained steadfast instead of retreating like others had after receiving a few blows. Curiosity piqued, Kang inquired about Mew's reasons for engaging in fights, pondering if Mew aspired to a life as a ruffian. Mew flashed a grin, making it clear that idle chatter wasn't the reason for his visit. Kang's anger intensified, solidifying his belief that Mew had lost all sense of reason. Kang issued a challenge to him, seeking a confrontation. With a swift burst of energy, they lunged ahead, unleashing a rapid series of punches. Mew skillfully evaded each attack, gaining confidence with every swift movement. Kang felt a surge of frustration as Mew deftly dodged every one of his attempts to land a blow. It was clear to him that his opponent's skills matched his boastful words. In the face of mounting pressure, Mew stayed composed, consistently fending off Kang's advances, which left Kang astonished. Han unleashed a swift left-right combination, hoping to obscure Mew's vision and deliver a powerful punch. However, Mew had already foreseen this move. So far, Kong had been unable to connect with a solid hit on Mew. For Kong, this was merely the beginning. He resolved to use Mew as his target for venting his frustration and charged forward once more, delivering a series of forceful strikes. Mew observed that things had changed from how they were before. Kang was relentless, allowing Mew no time to catch his breath. Despite Mew's efforts to endure, Kang persistently focused on his vulnerabilities. Kang delivered a powerful blow to Mew's side, following it up with a swift kick to his midsection. Kang retreated briefly, allowing Mew to process the intense sting. He mentioned that it seemed like Mew's arm had stopped responding altogether. The reminder came to him, emphasizing that the judge was unyielding, regardless of any injuries. Mew shivered as agony coursed through her. Without any context or additional sentences, here is a rewritten version of the original sentence. However, an unexpected burst of laughter escaped. The unexpected turn of events caught Kang off guard, fueling his anger and driving him to act with increased ruthlessness. Mew had already grasped the difference in their strength. He realized that defeating the scoundrel Kang was impossible at this moment, especially while Mew was confined to Li Ho's injured form. Despite the challenges, Mew remained determined and refused to surrender. For him, victory was about more than just sheer strength. The focus was on remaining vigilant and composed, with a particular emphasis on refraining from smiling. Drawing from a millennium of combat experience, Mew recalled a particular clash that mirrored the intensity of the current situation. It was one of those uncommon instances where Mew had almost been defeated. Despite everything, Mew found no regret in the battle. In fact, it had been a source of enjoyment for her. Mew was determined to achieve victory at any cost. He compelled himself to regain composure and suppress his feelings. The unsettling smile vanished from his features as Mew intently observed the motions of his adversary. As another punch aimed at his face, Mew swiftly took action. In a clever maneuver, he managed to divert his opponent's attention just enough to spot an opportunity. The character launched a series of successive strikes against the enormous beast. Despite Mew's valiant efforts, his attacks had little effect, leaving him feeling let down. As Mew continued to engage in the battle, relying heavily on his intellect, it appeared to have little impact on his adversary. Mew's genuine strength was rooted in his emotions, and despite his efforts to keep it in check, that unsettlingly familiar grin inevitably reappeared. In the present moment, Mew recalled how he had a tendency to rise above his emotions whenever he was determined to achieve victory. He compelled himself to adopt a sullen demeanor, yet he failed to recognize the unattractive appearance of Li Ho's features when mimicking Mew's expression. Kang's frustration intensified as he referred to Mew as an irrational fool. In a fit of anger, he resolved to put an end to Mew's antics once and for all if the mischief continued. Mew lingered in the same spot with Li Ho's unpleasant expression, feigning ignorance about what was about to happen to him. Kang lunged at Mew with a punch, but Mew quickly retreated a step, skillfully avoiding the blow. He aimed but missed, his strike landing on a nearby tree instead. Mew realized it was necessary to defend himself. With determination, he firmly planted his foot into the ground. A burst of dust surged toward Kang's face and eyes, but his protective glasses shielded him, preventing any harm or blindness. Kang remarked that using the tactic of throwing dirt into someone's eyes was a strategy befitting only an aspiring criminal, noting how such a move was entirely foreseeable. Kang was convinced that Mew merited a punishment. Gripping his weapon firmly, he advanced toward Mew. At that moment, Mew's head dipped slightly, causing Kang to hesitate, uncertain if it was a deceptive maneuver. Mew began to provoke him, questioning whether he intended to launch an attack. Kang felt his anger surge within him, like a pot of water on the verge of boiling over. Without hesitation, Kang charged forward once more. The attack was skillfully avoided by using Li Ho's comical expression as a distraction. Kang attempted a surprise assault from an angle Mew couldn't see. Mew managed to dodge once more, but this time, the attack grazed his chin slightly. Mew had already realized that Kang's target was now his chin. Mew came to the understanding that his previous opponents had taken a more defensive approach in their battles. The terrain was littered with numerous obstacles, which made rapid movement and launching an attack challenging. Advancements in flat ground and suitable footwear appeared to enable modern individuals to adopt a more aggressive approach in combat. Mew, grasping the situation, carefully managed the pace and direction of their actions. The intention behind his move of kicking up dust was not directed at Kang's face. Instead, it aimed to disperse small rocks across the path, forming barriers that would hinder Kang's progress. Mew continued his taunting to provoke Kang's aggression, directing Kang's actions precisely to Mew's desired outcome. Mew skillfully evaded every move, guiding Kang over the strategically placed patches of gravel and sand they had prepared. Mew was biding their time, anticipating the ideal opportunity to strike. When Kang stumbled and lost his footing, Mew lunged ahead, poised to strike a critical area. In the final moments, Mew's arm succumbed to weakness. Instead of delivering a forceful strike, Mew transformed the move into a feeble hit with her elbow. The impact was powerful enough to break Kang's protective glasses and cause him to stumble momentarily. In a teasing manner, the individual pointed out that he had failed to hit his target once more. Kang retaliated fiercely, wielding his weapon with formidable strength. Mew's leg was shattered, compelling him to collapse to his knees, overwhelmed by pain. Kang, now towering with confidence, jeered at Mew, predicting that Mew would continue to laugh in such a manner in the days to come. However, Kang was determined to ensure that Mew would never repeat this behavior again. With a determined glint in his eyes, he lifted his weapon, aiming to obliterate Mew's jaw. While still on her knees, Mew didn't attempt to dodge the incoming action. As the strike descended, Mew shut his eyes, recalling the previous moment he encountered failure, almost 4 millennia prior. Without warning, an object hurtled from the side and collided with Kang's face, forcing him to stumble backward. Something tumbled and rolled away, disappearing behind the cover of the trees. Kang appeared uncertain and on edge, questioning whether another presence lingered close by. A peculiar and tentative voice reached out to its master. Kang suddenly became aware that someone might be close by, and he was determined to avoid being noticed. With his hood pulled over his head, he swiftly dashed away. Mew was taken aback as he spun around to face the source of the voice. He noticed a small, lizard-like creature adorned with tiny horns. Recognizing it as his dragonling, in the realm of the gods, Lucifer had successfully ensnared Mew's celestial form within an impenetrable barrier. He ensured that Mew's soul could never find its way back. The individual transported both the lifeless form of Mew and the young dragon back to his territory, ensuring he could monitor them closely. Lucifer concluded that the only task left was to break through Earth's barrier. He attempted to persuade the young dragon to turn against its master by promising it great power as a reward. Initially, the young dragon kept silent, eventually murmuring words too soft for Lucifer to catch. Lucifer, consumed by fury, insisted that the dragonlings break their silence. The young dragon gestured toward the magical barrier that held Mew's form. It appeared to be curious, contemplating whether the presence of a barrier rendered any form of attack ineffective. Lucifer, perceiving skepticism in the young dragon, asserted with assurance that the barrier was impossible to breach and insisted that the dragonling comply with his command. Lucifer became aware of an oddity. The dragonling emitted a vibrant, crackling light that intensified with each passing moment. Before Lucifer had a chance to respond, the roof of the castle fractured into pieces, leading to a tremendous eruption soon after. The voracious force devoured almost the entire expanse of the divine realm. The small and wounded dragonling swiftly moved away from the explosion, desperately searching for its master. Anger burning within him, Lucifer pursued relentlessly. The dragonling was labeled as a curse, and there were threats to annihilate both him and Mew simultaneously. He unleashed a powerful burst of magic. The young dragon skillfully evaded the attack at the last possible moment. The attack missed its target and instead collided with Mew's throne. The young dragon plummeted from the sky, descending rapidly back toward the earth. Upon arrival, he crashed forcefully into the realm of Li Ho. The character detailed all the events that had transpired. Mew initially chose to remain silent, absorbing the sounds around her. Suddenly, his demeanor shifted dramatically. Anger surged within him as Mew internally vowed that Lucifer would face retribution for his actions once Mew reclaimed his physical form. In an instant, Mew's face transformed dramatically, shifting from one of anger to one of excitement. Mew had come to the conclusion that Lucifer's apparent vulnerability was a deliberate act. However, Mew was fully prepared to confront the coward. This shift in demeanor caught Dragonling off guard, leaving him astonished by his master's unexpected change in attitude. Mew's anticipation for the upcoming battle filled her with exhilaration, prompting her to throw a series of energetic punches. Realizing that his frail physique was inadequate, he understood the necessity of gaining strength before he could effectively wield it in combat. Mew realized that with his arms shaking so uncontrollably, it would take some time before he could rely on them again. Mew suddenly recalled the enchanted orb he had requested Dragonling to create for him. Dragonling acknowledged with a nod, signaling that it still remembered. The small creature lacked a pocket or a bag to hold it. The creature had carefully stored the orb within itself and now released it with a gentle cough. The orb emerged, slick with the creature's saliva, prompting Mew to let out a weary sigh. He then took his bedsheet and began to wipe the orb clean. Dragonling clarified that the object was a dragon bloodstone, enhanced with a singular healing spell. Regretfully, it mentioned that, had it anticipated the situation, it would have ensured to bring additional stones. The object was retrieved, and its surface was carefully cleaned of the slippery residue. The object was gently placed into his hand, with a firm press ensuring it was securely held. Without warning, the orb began to emit an unusual monite. Mew's body became enveloped by the mysterious force. As it wrapped around him, his injuries started to mend, yet Mew observed something unexpected. The spell appeared to be far more complex than a mere healing incantation. Mew noticed that his muscles were growing increasingly sensitive, leading him to ponder whether this change was due to some form of body enhancement. Dragonling, with a beaming smile, revealed that it had merged its own magic into the stone. It shared that it had put considerable effort into crafting it. After a brief pause, the orb contracted into a tiny sphere resting in Mew's palm. Observing closely, Mew realized there remained a portion of the orb, indicating minimal mana had been consumed. He speculated this might be due to his human form not having absorbed it entirely. Mew extended the object toward Dragonling and instructed it to make use of it. Dragonling was adamant that the gift was intended for Mew's future rather than for its own benefit. The creature consumed the orb once more, determined to safeguard it for its master. On the other side, a young girl with glasses played with her pet, a golden lizard named Dooley, who perched contentedly on her finger. She imagined how much more enjoyable it would be if Dooley could speak, allowing them to converse and play together daily. After a brief pause, she returned Dooley to its snug place and then departed for school. In the classroom once more, the one-time tormentor sat silently at his desk, absorbed in a book. Reflecting on his past actions, he realized that bullying had never truly been his calling. He concluded that focusing on his studies would be a more worthwhile pursuit than stirring up trouble. Mew made a grand and theatrical entrance. Upon seeing the individual who used to be a bully, recognition was instant. Mew, sporting a playful grin, inquired whether the young man was interested in engaging in another bout. The class president suddenly emerged behind Mew, expressing surprise at Mew's unexpected attendance that day. Beneath Mew's shirt, his dragonling concealed itself, its curious eyes peering out. Mew nodded, acknowledging that it was her words that had persuaded him to return. The class president felt a twinge of curiosity mixed with concern as they noticed his mischievous expression, which suggested that he might be planning something unusual. Despite any reservations she might have had, she still offered him her well wishes. As the day wore on, two young men found themselves deep in conversation over a juicy rumor. One of them, a girl brimming with excitement, eagerly inquired whether the other had caught wind of the second-year neutralization. The second person, appearing to be Kang, reacted with astonishment upon hearing the unexpected news. A young girl described how a second-year student was facing bullying. In utter disbelief, Kang questioned whether it was indeed the child who had put up a fight. The girl nodded as she recounted the incident where Mew had torn off the ear of the individual who dared to challenge him. This fearsome act earned him the nickname Neutralization. As Kang listened, memories resurfaced in his mind. His imagination painted vivid images of Guok's injured ear and Mew's wild demeanor during their confrontation. This led Kang to ponder whether Mew was the individual everyone had been discussing. Kang started to question the truthfulness of Guok's tale, recalling the insincere tears he had witnessed. Filled with anger, Kang came to the conclusion that Guok might have been deceitful. As Guok made his way back home later, he felt a sense of relief, awkwardly scratching his head while reflecting on the situation. It had been a close call, and fortunately, he had managed to avoid a major confrontation over a falsehood. Mew retraced his steps, irritation bubbling within as he reflected on the day's lack of excitement. His classmates appeared uninspiring and lackluster in his eyes. Mew thought it would be a good opportunity to practice at the sand arena instead. Mew's attention was abruptly drawn to a figure in the distance. Mew instantly realized who he was. Mew shouted after him, exclaiming that it was the same person from the previous day. Upon turning around, Kang's heart leapt in terror at the sight of Mew, prompting him to take off in a sprint. Mew darted in pursuit, a playful grin stretching across her face. Kang felt a pang of concern that Mew might pursue him, as he had noticed something familiar. Although he was disguised with a mask and protective glasses, his identity remained hidden. Kang was taken aback when Mew's recognition of him seemed to come effortlessly. In an effort to shake off Mew, Kang veered swiftly onto a narrow side path. For a moment, the individual slipped from sight. Frustration welled inside Mew as he clicked his tongue, realizing that this moment presented an ideal opportunity for a fight. The small dragonling emerged from the folds of Mew's shirt, quickly realizing that Mew was on the lookout for the rude individual they had encountered the previous day. The small dragon gracefully leapt down to the ground. The creature began investigating its surroundings with the skill of a seasoned detective. Without warning, an individual emerged before it. The dragonling gazed upwards, its head cocked to one side in a display of curiosity. A young girl with glasses suddenly observed the scene. Initially, Dragonling felt a mix of surprise and slight apprehension. Upon noticing it, the girl's cheeks turned a rosy pink. While her eyes lingered on the charmingly chatty lizard, taking a seat, she grasped the object firmly in her hands. The young dragon resisted and struggled to escape. The girl continued to harbor doubts about the creature's authenticity, questioning whether it truly existed. She eventually came to the conclusion that it was even more adorable than her beloved pet Dooley. In the blink of an eye, the small dragon sprang from her grasp, darting away with surprising speed. When Mew appeared in its path, the dragonling sprinted toward him, seeking refuge behind his trouser leg. The entity expressed remorse and explained that it had not intended to deplete its energy. The girl approached Mew, her expression clouded with confusion. She inquired whether the creature was his companion. Mew gave a nod and remarked in a nonchalant manner that it was exceptionally well behaved. Yujin, the class president of Liho's class, experienced a wave of jealousy upon noticing Mew accompanied by such a delightful pet. Observing her expression, Mew devised a plan. Mew acted instinctively, lifting his leg, which caused the dragonling to shiver and cling tightly to him. He extended it toward Yujin, silently offering it to her should she wish to take it. Mew remained indifferent to whatever the dragonling might have preferred. Upon hearing the proposal, Eugene's expression brightened with excitement. Mew reached out, seized the dragonling by its head, and hurled it in her direction. He mentioned that in return, there was something he sought from her. The girl swiftly nodded, pleased to bring the adorable pet along with her. Mew redirected his attention to his objectives, instructing Dragonling in a relaxed manner to remain with Yujin and return independently when ready. The young dragon let out a panicked cry, terrified at the thought of being abandoned by its master. At Yujin's residence, Yujin quietly watched the young dragon, who seemed entirely uninterested in the ongoing drama. She pondered whether it harbored any resentment towards her for removing it from Mew. The dragonling let out a sigh and identified itself as the assistant to the master. The message conveyed that its master had instructed it to assist her with anything she required. Yujin found herself captivated by the adorable yet professional demeanor, and she felt her heart flutter with unexpected excitement. The creature reached out with a hand as small as a baby's, and she grasped it gently. She confirmed that when it referred to master, it was indeed talking about Liho. The girl chuckled softly, revealing to the creature that she held the position of class president. She consistently ranked at the top of her class. The dragonling expressed surprise upon discovering that Mew did not hold the leadership position in the area. Despite this revelation, the dragonling maintained a firm belief that Mew was the most powerful individual in existence. Yujin questioned the prevailing opinion, insisting that Mew had not achieved a high rank. As the dragonling attempted to comprehend this revelation, it resolved to assist Mew in becoming the most formidable. Yujin gave a nod, yet she imposed a stipulation. She insisted that the dragonling must visit her home frequently. Initially, the creature was not fond of this notion. The creature allowed a sly grin to form, realizing this moment presented an ideal chance to collect knowledge about the world on behalf of its master. The creature nodded in agreement, expressing its determination to do whatever was necessary for Mew's future. At the same time, Mew was at the park's gym, diligently focused on her intense training session. Following an intense exercise session, Mew examined his arms and observed the noticeable improvement in his physique. As his muscles healed, they seemed to expand, and with each stage of recovery he found himself gaining even more strength. Mew took a moment to assume several practice stances. Feeling satisfied, he gave a nod, and his confidence began to swell. His thoughts drifted once more to the mysterious figure he had encountered recently, their face hidden behind a mask. Mew concluded that the masked individual was likely attending the school, which meant their paths would probably cross in the near future. As Mew departed, the iron rod close by displayed the marks of his formidable punch. As they strolled along the bustling street, the sights and sounds of the city enveloped them. Mew became aware of the pungent scent clinging to him, a reminder of his own perspiration. Upon entering Yujin's neighborhood, Mew found the dragonling already present, assisting her with her online shopping tasks. Dragonling unexpectedly detected the aroma of Mew lingering in the air. The figure moved swiftly toward the window, noting that it frequently visited this spot. The creature bounded out into the open and effortlessly vaulted over a wall in its quest to locate Mew. A small creature was settled comfortably atop Mew's shoulder. The entity conveyed that it had thoroughly captivated Yujin's heart. As Mew's subordinate, she resolved to remain loyal to him from that moment forward. At the same time, Mew spotted a shadow lurking in a nearby alley. Dragonling instantly identified the familiar scent and quietly noted that it belonged to the same individual they had encountered previously. Mew took a few steps backward and entered the narrow alley. Kang was involved in a confrontation, aggressively dealing with an individual. The person, accused of theft, firmly claimed that the altercation over the missing bicycle was a misunderstanding. He warned Kang that if he wasn't released, others would soon retaliate against him. Fueled by rising anger, Kang delivered another forceful kick to the thief. Kang was deeply engrossed in his own competition. Without realizing it, he had not noticed Mew silently materialize behind him. Mew stood with a playful grin, thrilled at the opportunity to uncover the identity of the masked individual once more. Danger seemed to approach Kang from behind, prompting him to turn and discover that it was the same wild boy once more. The tiny dragonling continued to hold on to Mew. The persistent pull on Mew's sleeve urged him to look another way, yet he continued to pay it no mind. Mew advanced directly toward Kang, prepared to face him head-on. Kang felt a twinge of reluctance, attempting to explain that the situation was a mistake, and he insisted that he hadn't come with the intention of fighting. However, Mew was unfazed by his words and continued to move forward with determination. Kang swiftly assumed a fighting position, even though he felt an inner reluctance to confront Mew without just cause. Once, Kang had engaged in a conflict with Mew and had injured him without a valid reason. Kang found himself hesitating, uncertain if it was appropriate to strike preemptively, even as Mew advanced toward him. For a brief moment, silence enveloped the pair as they stood still. Mew feigned an aggressive stance, which led Kang to decide on launching a preemptive strike as a precaution. It appeared that Mew had been anticipating this moment the whole time. Now, Mew had the ideal justification to initiate a real fight. On the opposite side, Kang was taken aback and uncertain whether Mew intended to launch an attack. Despite his confusion, Kang instinctively assumed a defensive stance. Before either of the two could react, a cunning thief seized the opportunity presented by their standoff. With swift and stealthy movements, he emerged from the shadows and swiftly grabbed Kang's weapon from behind. The thief lifted the weapon with the intent to strike Kang. Kang swiftly moved out of the way, skillfully dodging the incoming attack. Kang deftly evaded the attack, his eyes catching Mew standing vulnerably in the thief's line of fire. A wave of anxiety washed over him as he realized Mew could be hurt, and there seemed to be no way for him to intervene in time. Despite the situation, Mew showed no signs of being affected. At the very last instant, Mew made the daring decision to face the attack directly, rather than avoiding or defending against it. The forceful strike landed squarely on Mew's head, a blow so intense it would have rendered most individuals unconscious or even lifeless. Despite barely receiving a scratch, Mew responded with an unsettling grin. The thrill of the moment had ignited excitement within Mew, providing the perfect opportunity to unleash their full potential. Mew acted without a moment's delay. He swiftly delivered a powerful kick to the thief's control device, shattering it completely. The thief, overwhelmed by the sudden loss of his controller, let his weapon fall and stumbled backward in agony. Mew swiftly grabbed the object as it flew through the air. The blade was firmly positioned against the thief's neck. With a swift motion, they pulled him closer. The sequence concluded as he executed a fierce headbutt directly to the other person's face. Before the thief had a chance to regain composure, Mew unleashed a relentless barrage of powerful punches upon him. At last, Mew delivered a powerful and conclusive strike using the weapon. The thief's confidence crumbled as he plummeted to the ground, writhing in pain. Mew stood confidently, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. Suddenly, his expression shifted to one of disappointment as a wave of boredom washed over him. Mew recalled the moment he initially set foot on Earth. In the past, engaging in a fight stirred emotions within him. Now, it seemed as if everything had become far too effortless. Mew thought that the experience would be more exciting if the opponent was powerful enough to challenge her, someone with the strength of Kang. The individuals shifted their gaze, noticing Kang had already disappeared, leaving no trace behind. A short time before, as Mew was preoccupied with delivering a beating to the thief, Kang had hastily fled, feeling anxious about the relentless pursuit of the unhinged individual who was constantly on his tail. Mew was unaware of the small dragonling seated close by, as she was preoccupied with the delightful aroma and reflecting on how long it had been since her last proper meal. As Kang hurried off without a backward glance, his foot accidentally struck the small creature, launching it through the air. In his haste to locate a hiding spot, he failed to observe it entirely. A short while after, Kang returned to his house. His mind was consumed with thoughts of Mew, pondering how anyone could find such enjoyment in fighting. Huna entered the room from another part of the house, her lips curling into a playful grin as she teasingly referred to him as a prosecutor. She reflected on her own transformation from being a stalking victim to becoming someone who actively ended it. The young woman playfully chided Kang for obstructing the way of a prosecutor. Kang let out a sigh and pondered aloud about the possibility of pain when a prosecutor was struck, yet Huna appeared completely unbothered. Without addressing his concerns, she nonchalantly vanished into her room to change clothes, all while requesting that he make some ramen in the meantime. Kang found himself lost in thought, recalling the day when a stalker had harmed his sister, and a flood of memories washed over him. He recalled a time when the motivation behind his punches was genuine, untainted by regret or uncertainty. The following morning, as Mew made his way to school, he strolled along leisurely, holding Kang's weapon effortlessly, while the small dragon perched comfortably on his shoulder. The young dragon expressed remorse for the previous day's mischief, explaining that its actions were driven by hunger, yet Mew showed no sign of concern. Anyone who caught sight of the small creature reacted with astonishment, murmuring among themselves as they speculated whether it might be a Komodo dragon. Mew spotted Eugene standing close by and decided to get her attention. Upon turning around and catching sight of the dragonling, a wave of joy spread across her face. Mew gently reminded her of the agreement they had made, noting that she was only allowed to borrow the dragonling for a single day. She then inquired about an individual known as Iljimi. Eugene clarified that the name was merely a nickname, a shortened version of Iljan Midijak, a person famous for confronting and fighting bullies. She mentioned that Iljimi was recognized for taking down anyone who pretended to be strong or harassed those who were vulnerable. Eugene inquired whether this implied that Mew was a sort of Iljan. Mew responded nonchalantly, expressing that he had no idea. Mew was filled with determination, recalling how Kang had previously managed to escape. This time, Mew was resolute in not allowing him to slip away again. Unbeknownst to Mew, Kang was actually nearby, silently watching him from a hidden vantage point. Kang approached Mew, intending to frighten him. Leaning in, he murmured softly into Mew's ear, instructing him to stay behind once school was over as he planned to seek him out. In the blink of an eye, Kang advanced smoothly, slipping his weapon back into its place so effortlessly that Mew remained oblivious to its disappearance. Eugene, standing close by and caught off guard by the unexpected situation, turned to Mew with curiosity, wondering aloud if she and the other person were acquainted. Mew couldn't help but grin as anticipation bubbled within them for the upcoming meeting. With a single, decisive word, they responded, Iljimi. Throughout the entire day in class, Mew remained brimming with excitement. Mew continually reassured himself that he could endure the wait for as long as he could continue to fight. However, resisting the urge to act proved to be a significant challenge for him. Underneath his desk, his leg bounced uncontrollably, a clear reflection of both his nervousness and excitement. Beneath his trousers, the frightened young dragon clung tightly, convinced it was experiencing a terrifying earthquake. As the school day came to a close, the night students received instructions to remain for self-study, whereas the rest of the students were permitted to depart. Mew hurriedly approached Eugene and placed the dragonling in her hands, requesting that she bring it along with her. The little creature was visibly exhausted, having been overwhelmed by the constant motion sickness. Eugene felt a rush of excitement and delight as he prepared to take it away. Once the others had departed, leaving Mew alone in the classroom, Kang arrived, his expression solemn. Kang remarked that it was fortunate Mew had remained silent. Then, he began rummaging through his bag in search of an item. In the following moment, Mew's expression was one of bewilderment as Kang placed an object into his hands. Mew pondered whether it might be a type of a mantis. Kang had donned a pair of training gloves and inquired of Mew about his fondness for combat. Mew shook his head, disagreeing with Kang's assumption. He clarified that Kang had misunderstood the situation. It wasn't about enjoying fights at all. Before Mew could continue speaking, a vivid memory overwhelmed him. It was the sensation of enduring and delivering countless strikes, feeling the strain on his muscles. The thrill coursing through him brought a vibrant sense of life. Mew's face flushed a deep shade of crimson as a wide grin spread across her features, reflecting her uncontainable excitement. Cam found herself puzzled by the look on his face. A person threw a pair of gloves to him and instructed him to wear them. Kang conveyed his inability to fully exert himself when faced with an adversary who didn't meet the criteria of a true opponent. Mew lunged ahead without hesitation, aiming to strike with a swift punch. Kang's life was abruptly and effortlessly extinguished. Feeling a surge of irritation, they let out a weary sigh. He reassured Mew, explaining that there was no reason to hurry, and reminded Mew that it was Mew who had initially come here looking for a fight. For a brief moment, Mew appeared to find a sense of calm, reminding himself to remain loose and not tense up. Meanwhile, Kang settled into an ideal boxer's posture. Mew charged ahead once more, yet Kang sidestepped the assault with ease and delivered a swift blow to Mew's jaw. Without hesitation, Kang unleashed another formidable strike from the other direction. As Kang gazed at his clenched fist, a surge of exhilaration coursed through him. It was an enjoyable sensation, one he realized he hadn't felt for quite some time. Kang concluded that it was the perfect moment to introduce Mew to the world of boxing. Mew became acutely aware of the looming threat. Without any physical support, the assault might have been his undoing. Despite the potential for discouragement, Mew felt a surge of excitement. A broad grin spread across Mew's face as they readied themselves to continue with renewed enthusiasm. In a different classroom, under the dim lights of the nighttime self-study session, a young man with striking red hair dozed off with his head resting on the desk. Suddenly, his body shook violently as though he were struggling against a terrible dream. Upon springing to his feet, he glanced around in bewilderment, eventually spotting a piece of chocolate and a note resting on his desk. The note expressed disappointment over Heejun's tendency to doze off during class once more. Heejun glanced at his phone, noticed the time was slipping away, and hurriedly began to gather his belongings into his bag. As he made his way to the exit, he savored the taste of the chocolate. A peculiar sensation caused him to suddenly halt. As he strolled by a classroom, he observed Mew and Kang fully engrossed in their heated argument. Mew exerted all her strength to fend off the relentless barrage of forceful strikes. At the final instant, Mew lifted his leg. In a swift and decisive motion, a powerful kick landed squarely on Kang's stomach, driving him backward. Mew attempted to deliver a kick aimed at Kang's face, yet Kang managed to evade it just in time. Seething with anger, Kang questioned Mew's actions, bewildered by the fact that kicks were being thrown in what was meant to be a boxing match. Mew leaped into the air, questioning the notion that battles must be confined to the use of fists. The force of his kick struck Kang's face with such power that it propelled him backward through the air. Mew advanced with determination, delivering yet another powerful kick to Kang's shoulder. He lost his footing. Kang found himself caught off guard, as he hadn't anticipated the sheer intensity of Mew's assaults. Mew launched another attack, targeting Kang's knee with a swift kick. A wave of fear surged through Kang as he considered the possibility that if his lower body failed him, everything would be lost. Mew relentlessly landed powerful strikes on Kang's critical areas, yet Kang appeared completely unfazed by the assaults. Mew eventually took a step backward. He attempted to muster a self-satisfied grin, even though, in truth, everything had already fallen apart for him. The enhancement of his physical abilities had faded, leaving Mew unable to compete with Kang. His body shook and was drenched in sweat from sheer exhaustion. Kang observed Mo's peculiar response. In an unexpected twist, a mischievous and unsettling grin appeared on Kang's face, replacing the expression that had been on Mew's. With a teasing tone, Kang taunted Mew, questioning whether Mew had already run out of energy. On the opposite side, Mew felt a jolt of surprise at Kang's accurate guess, despite Mew's efforts to keep his thoughts hidden. Maintaining his facade, Mew acted as if it was no big deal. However, internally, he questioned how much longer he could endure this chaotic struggle. A nervous chuckle escaped him, prompting Kang to join in with laughter of his own. Together, they remained in place, sharing a moment of mutual amusement. As Heejun peered through the window, his red hair catching the light, disbelief was etched across his face. Heejun regarded them with disdain, finding their actions both pathetic and absurd. Showing disinterest, they shifted their attention away from the trivial argument. Returning to the classroom, Mew observed Kang moving aggressively toward him. Kang perceived this moment as an ideal opportunity to strike, noticing that Mew's energy was waning. Mew adjusted his stance to a defensive one, attempting to use his leg as a shield. Kang delivered a powerful punch straight to Mew's leg. In a sudden outburst of agony, Mew let out a cry and twirled on one leg, struggling to maintain his footing. Observing this, Kang seized the chance without hesitation. He swiftly delivered another mighty blow, propelling Mew backward until they collided with the wall. Mew leaned wearily against the surface, internally lamenting that his frail physique was no match for the robust strength of Kang's muscular build. Mew longed to harness his limited mana, yet his previous attempt had ended poorly. Despite the fatigue, Mew pushed himself to his feet, mustering all the bravery he could find to make another attempt at channeling a small amount of mana into his hand. Mew dashed forward with a swift motion and delivered a strike. However, to Kang, the blow lacked strength, reminiscent of a child's feeble attempt. Kang effortlessly intercepted Mew's punch midair, a smug expression playing across his face as he ridiculed the lightness of Mew's attempts. However, a peculiar feeling began to stir within Kang. As he moved, he briefly turned his head to take a look. In that instant, Mew seized the opportunity and delivered a strong punch straight to Kang's face. Despite the weakness of Mew's attack, the impact left Kang feeling disoriented. Kang, bewildered by the unfolding events, reached out and took hold of Mew's hand. He sensed an unusual energy emanating from Mew, prompting him to concentrate deeply as he pondered whether Mew was employing some mysterious ability. In that moment of vulnerability, Mew launched another attack, delivering a headbutt that sent Kang reeling backward until he collided with the classroom door. Kang's body abruptly hit the ground. Mew stood in place, a mischievous and eerie grin spreading across their face. Mew understood that their plan was unfolding successfully. Magic was harnessed by concentrating mana in one place. This process involved condensing pure mana while eliminating any impurities. However, on Earth, where mana was scarce, the process merely compressed the air, resulting in a minor explosion when released. Mew was surprised by its effectiveness, noticing that a faint swirl of mana lingered on his fingertip. The truly thrilling aspect was observing Kang lying motionless on the ground. Mew prepared to make his presence known by sinking his teeth into Kang's ear, intending to include him among his assortment of toys. Kang's eyes flew open unexpectedly, and he used his strength to shove Mew away. As a professional boxer, Kang was determined not to allow Mew to act on his whims without resistance. Rising to his feet with a wince, he grudgingly acknowledged Mew's victory in this round, cautioning him not to overstep his bounds. Kang felt an urge to mention the peculiar sensation that accompanied Mew's strike, yet the discomfort he was in hindered his ability to voice his thoughts. Consequently, choosing to let the matter rest for now, he shifted his focus away and began to depart, his body still bearing the signs of injury. Mew couldn't shake off a tinge of disappointment as he reflected on how Kang had managed to avoid becoming just another toy in his collection. That evening at Yugen's residence, the tiny dragonling wrestled with the burden of a massive bag, overloaded with items it was tasked to transport for its master. As the creature prepared to depart, Eugen cheerfully called out, extending an offer of assistance if it required anything. Acknowledging the gesture, the dragonling nodded and swiftly headed toward Leiho's location. In the distance, it soon caught sight of Kang. He appeared disoriented, clutching his injured face. Dragonling instantly identified the individual, recalling how this person had once treated it like a soccer ball, kicking it without any provocation. Filled with rage, the young dragon's thirst for revenge ignited. It readied itself to strike and lunge toward Kang. Kang, a skilled professional boxer, reacted on instinct, swiftly launching the unfortunate creature through the air as if it were nothing more than an irritating fly. The young dragon collapsed, its body frail and shaking as Kang departed without sparing it another glance. As Mew made his way through the scene, he encountered a wounded dragonling within the area. The following day, Mew strolled along the street, clad in his brand-new school uniform. His backpack hung over one shoulder, with the dragonling securely nestled within its confines. The dragonling appeared at ease and confident in its surroundings. It boasted about its training progress, declaring that everything was going smoothly, and praised Class President Eugen as an ideal subordinate, behaving as though these circumstances were tailored specifically for it. Dragonling asserted that it was wiser to avoid attracting too much notice and preferred to remain concealed for the time being. At the same time, Kang was strolling along the opposite side of the street. He spotted Mew and made his way over to join him. Kang casually inquired about Mew's choice to don his school uniform on a Saturday. Mew appeared taken aback, questioning what day it was. Kang, sighing in disbelief, suspected Mew was joking and chose to drop the subject. Instead, Kang made another attempt to express what he hadn't been able to articulate the previous day. He inquired whether Mew had a fondness for fighting. Mew, however, reiterated that his involvement wasn't due to enjoyment, but rather out of necessity. Kang struggled to accept what Mew had said, particularly after witnessing the genuine thrill on Mew's face during their skirmish. Kang then suggested that Mew should join him on his journey. He assured Mew that if he stayed by his side, he would never feel bored and would have ample opportunities for more battles. Upon hearing the words, Mew's body shook with anticipation, and a fierce, exhilarated grin spread across his face once more. Although Kang's intention hadn't been precisely what Mew interpreted, Mew's eagerness was unmistakable. Without hesitation, Mew requested Kang to escort him to a destination without delay. Kang hesitated, uncertain about how to reply, and clarified that he didn't intend for Mew to initiate a confrontation immediately. Mew questioned whether Kang was attempting to deceive him. Unbeknownst to the others, the small dragon was covertly observing their discussion from within Mew's bag, harboring a lingering resentment towards Kang for striking it on 2 occasions in the past. At Wild Goose High School, which was not the same as Mew's, a student took up a position outside the restroom, determined to prevent anyone from entering. Inside the room, a large individual was interrogating another student, questioning him about his earnings. This student happened to be the very thief Mew had confronted earlier that day. Now, he found himself holding up the number 20,001. Young Joe, known as one of the primary bullies at the school, became enraged and exclaimed that the situation was utterly absurd and woefully insufficient. The young thief began to whine, lamenting that if he had managed to sell the bike for a better price on the second-hand market, the return would have been greater. Upon hearing the name Iljami, Yang Joe, consumed by anger, drove his fist into the wall. In his fury, he expressed his rage aloud. Faced with the prospect of repaying both the principal amount and the interest, he found the situation untenable. In response, he insisted that the small-time thief summon everyone obstructing his path. The following day, in a different part of the city, Mew and Kang strolled side by side along the bustling streets. Kang revealed that in the past, he would vent his frustration by roughing up troublemakers. However, after his encounter with Mew, he found the experience surprisingly enjoyable. Mew considered the situation and pondered whether it might be more effective to confront him directly, rather than spending time on opponents who were not as strong. Han reassured him, explaining that their rematch was just a matter of time. Mew's attention was suddenly drawn to something unusual. The air around them was filled with dense cigarette smoke, which both of them quickly noticed. Kang donned his mask and protective glasses, remarking that their initial target was probably close. Without any hesitation, Kang took advantage of the thick smoke, stealthily moving in for a closer approach. Within the group, one of the individuals was the first to spot Kang. Initially mistaking him for just another passerby, he adopted an arrogant demeanor and insisted that Kang surrender his wallet. At that moment, Kang felt confident that he had successfully reached his target. Acting on instinct, he delivered a punch directly to the man's face. As the haze dissipated, the others immediately identified him. The wounded man shouted the name Iljami, his cry capturing the attention of everyone else nearby. Kang realized that the group's numbers were larger than he had anticipated, and then, upon noticing Mew close by, he instinctively reached out for assistance. Mew stood in place, shaking with a mix of anxiety and thrill. Eager for battle, he hesitated, anticipating the first move from someone else. At that moment, the man whom Kang had punched earlier seized Mew's leg in a fit of anger, yelling that Mew was in cahoots with Kang. This was precisely the opportunity Mew had been anticipating. He quickly leaped into motion, beginning by giving the man a sharp pinch. Mew leaped into the fray to join Kang, and together they took on all the bullies. Mew found herself slightly let down by their lackluster physical state. Their muscles were mediocre at best, and their breathing was compromised from smoke exposure. In the meantime, Kang came across a feminine bag lying on the ground and passed it to Kang. The object was returned to its rightful owner, a girl with striking red hair. In an unexpected twist, Kang discovered that the girl was a classmate, someone he secretly admired. Just as he was about to speak to her, a group of additional men arrived on the scene. Dragonling, who served as Mew's loyal sidekick, attempted to alert him to the situation. However, Mew was already aware that these newcomers were not ordinary individuals. They were a reinforcement squad summoned by Yang Zhou. After their defeat, the earlier opponents managed to relay a message to him. Yang Zhou had arrived, filled with anger towards Iljami and prepared to discipline Kang for disrupting their activities. Kang reached a breaking point and chose to unleash his anger, brandishing a weapon in response. Mew's excitement soared beyond limits, causing his face to flush as red as a ripe tomato. Under the command of Yang Zhou, the gang surged forward with the energy and coordination reminiscent of a budget-friendly version of the famous colorful heroes. Mew barely gave Kang a moment to catch his breath before he hurled himself directly into the midst of the turmoil. With a single punch, one person was knocked to the ground. With each swift kick, Mew sent another opponent crumpling to the ground, resembling a pile of freshly folded laundry. Swift and efficient, Mew moved among them with the precision of a bug zapper at a mosquito-infested gathering. Just as Mew began to relish the impromptu exercise session, something unexpected occurred. From the side, a hand suddenly appeared, delivering a powerful slap that seemed to knock the spirit out of him. It was Yang Zhou, and with just that one swift action, Yang Zhou left Mew astonished and sent him sprawling onto the ground. Yang Zhou, seething with anger, questioned the unexpected presence of two Iljamis, insisting that only one should exist. Nearby, Heejun, a young man with striking red hair, stood puzzled as he contemplated the unanswered calls. Heejun approached with growing interest as the noise of the scuffle reached his ears. Peering into the chaotic scene, he saw a group of boys engaged in a street fight and let out a heavy sigh. He found it pitiful, considering it a squander of precious moments. Just as he prepared to depart, an unexpected impulse caused him to hesitate. He observed a girl trapped in a corner, with Kang positioned in front of her, shielding her from the assailants. For a brief instant, Heejun stood motionless. There was something about the situation, something about the girl before him, that triggered memories from his past to flood his thoughts. Heejun's father had once been a champion in martial arts, a formidable figure whose descent into drug addiction gradually transformed him into a shadow of his former self. The oppressive violence from his father drove his mother to escape, though she was unable to bring her children along. Heejun stayed, his body battered and bruised, as he shielded his younger sister from their father's fury. Heejun focused intently on his formidable father, silently withstanding all challenges while covertly honing his own skills. Heejun matured over the years, his physique gradually becoming robust enough to rival that of his father's. When the crucial moment finally arrived, Heejun resisted, determined to endure and persevere. Heejun's initial defiance incited his father's fury, leading to a menacing threat against both him and his sister. On that fateful day, Heejun reached a pivotal moment from which he could not turn back. Driven by the need to safeguard his younger sister Daljun, he took decisive action against his father, resulting in the end of his father's life. In the courtroom later, Heejun faced a conviction for murder. However, the court showed leniency, deciding on a year in juvenile detention rather than imposing a severe punishment. Following his release, Heejun took on the responsibility of providing for both himself and his sister. Heejun realized that his best advantage lay in remaining healthy and uninjured. Consequently, he steered clear of needless confrontations and took great care of his physical well-being. He once believed that Mew and Kang were foolish for risking their lives by engaging in battles. The situation had shifted dramatically, and he found himself unable to overlook the looming threat, particularly when it concerned his younger sister. The red-haired girl named Daljun remained oblivious to Heejun's presence nearby. Heejun kept himself in the shadows, watching from afar as the chaos unfolded before him. However, unlike before, an unfamiliar sensation stirred within him, a newfound determination that he hadn't experienced in a long time. Heejun's protective instinct for his sister overpowered any doubts he had. He recognized that this was a pivotal moment he could not overlook, no matter what happened next. Mew faced the anticipation of an upcoming formidable challenge, uncertain whether it would unfold amidst the celestial domains or within the confines of the schoolyard.